today the big story, Josh Huff released by the Eagles one day, John, after they said he would play on Sunday. The optics of this look terrible. They made Doug Pederson, I mean, we criticized the Sixers for Sam Hinkie not getting out there when Brett Brown had to take the bullet, no pun intended there, for Jahlil Okafor getting into a fight last year. This is kind of a similar situation. I don't know how the right hand didn't talk to the left hand on this one, but the optics, do you agree, look bad? Because yesterday it seemed that, people thought Doug did a pretty decent job and said what he had to say. I didn't quite agree with that, but it was obvious now that the organization really made him look bad.
Yeah, they did. Real quick, I got your CM Punk reference, unlike Peter. But, I mean, they made the head coach look terrible, bottom line. And I told Howie Roseman, this is a Howie Roseman decision. Make no mistake about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I often point out that's the best way to have long-term success in the NFL is to have clearly defined roles as far as head coach and general manager goes, and the general manager handles the roster, and the coach coaches the guys he's given. I believe in that type of setup, and that's what the Eagles have. Now, that said, if you're Howie Roseman and you're thinking at all about doing this, you have to alert your head coach before he goes in front of the media and says Josh Huff is going to play on Sunday.
Not only that, he had an opportunity. He had another opportunity today. I mean, okay, this to me, this might seem minor, John, but this goes to how bad it looks that they had to have made this decision before today, right, or sometime this morning, or last night, or before Frank Reich had to go to the podium. Which, not that he got grilled like Pederson did, but a question came up regarding Huff and the handling of these type of situations. Doesn't Howie Roseman need to speak before Reich today?
Yeah, I mean, you don't know the exact timing. I mean, Howie said he and Doug talked to Josh this morning, which can mean anything. The Eagles officially now announced that the move right before practice was set to start. So as far as the timing goes, that could have been very shaky as far as getting out there before Frank Reich, and who knows if Frank even knew about it. But I don't think he was going to be grilled about it all that much anyway, because of the day before we had all just assumed that Josh was going to play on Sunday. And he was at practice on Wednesday, and everything was normal. You get over that hump. We've seen it. We mentioned in the past with the precedent with Nigel Bradham. So there was no real intimation that this was about to happen until it happened. And then you do have Howie Roseman go out at 12:20, which is basically right after the open portion of practice is closed to the media. Then he spoke and didn't really give a lot of information. Just kept the same mantra of this is what's best for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I get it, but it's a double standard. And unless you can point to what is the difference and how he refused to do that, although he mentioned these are different circumstances, and that leads to speculation. And I talked to a source today who said he believes that Josh Huff brought the gun on team property, and that was the reason why things were made and the decisions were made. But that's from one source. That's not corroborated anywhere because the Philadelphia Eagles won't talk about what's different. And I think that's a problem. And I think he made his head coach look weak, not only to the media and to the fan base, but also the players in that locker room, because it does look like a double standard unless you start explaining your actions.
John McMullen with us, talking Eagles football and talking about the Josh Huff getting released today. John, Mike and I were discussing when we thought, or when do you think Jeffrey Lurie spoke with Josh Huff? I saw some video last night in a Derek Gunn piece where it looked like Jeffrey Lurie was speaking to him on the practice field. If you own the team, can't you summon the player to your office?
Yeah, he was talking to him on the practice field. I mentioned that in my story yesterday at 973ESPN.com. So we all saw him out there talking to Josh. Howie claims Don Splomensky, I can never say Don's name,
Don
and
S.
Howie
Yes.
and Doug all got together over the last 48 hours and kind of molded over and talked about what was going on and finally came to a decision this morning. And, yeah, it seems a little shaky. Certainly, as I said, this is a Howie Roseman decision. Now, while I say that, Jeffrey Lurie can obviously do what he wants as the owner of the team. So he could have steered the ship in a different direction if he wanted Josh Huff out of the building. That certainly could lend speculation to it. But as far as Doug goes, it's not up to him. And that's a tough position to be in. And I think that was a nice comparison that Mike made with Sam Hinkie when Jahlil Okafor got arrested speeding over the Ben Franklin. Poor Brett Brown had to go out there and sort of talk off the cuff without having the information. I mean, when you're in charge of making this decision, you should be the one talking about it and not sending out a mouthpiece that you're going to make look bad when you counter what he is saying. So I don't like the way Howie Roseman handled this at all.
Well, and I know Howie was asked about, did the statements that Huff made yesterday have anything to do with his decision? What was his answer, and do you believe his answer?
His answer was no, and I do believe that part of it. Although I will say this, for those who like conspiracy theories, I'll give you an example. Today, the Eagles, when they opened the locker room, it was later than usual, and there were less people in there than usual. So it was pretty clear that they talked to the players and said, "Look, if you don't want to deal with this, don't be in the locker room." And they probably told them at least what to say, or at least coached them a little bit. One of the biggest surprises on Wednesday was Josh Huff was at his locker immediately and talking about it and going off the cuff. And his lawyer was probably pulling his hair out when he was watching it. And some of the things he said, the thing about professional athletes all having guns, the sort of jokey quip about Gilbert Arenas, which, to be honest, to me, I thought it was funny. But other people take it in a different tone and take it in a different direction. And he didn't.
Well, John, can I interject real quick? So,
sure.
So today, Howie was asked, do you think that he brought the gun on the premises? And he said no. And the follow-up was, he said, we asked him, he said no. Well, did you do anything else?
Josh said no.
Right, Josh said no. Well, did you do any other investigating? No, we have not. I mean, where else? He would have had to stop someplace to go get that, right? Because I think you said yesterday he lives on the Jersey side, right?
Correct. Yeah. And
so he would have to have gone to practice. He would have to have gone to practice, go to Jersey, get a gun, come back to Philly, do whatever he was going to do, and then go back to Jersey. That doesn't add up.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what everyone. And there was no practice Tuesday, but he was at the facility watching film. So that's the story. And then Josh claims he didn't bring the gun to the NovaCare complex, which is against NFL rules to have any weapon at any NFL facility. But as I tried to mention on the show yesterday, Mike, you know how close the NovaCare complex is to the Walt Whitman. You're not picking up a gun at the CVS. So to assume that he either on his way to the NovaCare complex stopped at his friend's house, put the gun there, then left, picked up the gun, and went over the Walt Whitman, that's a tall tale. So, you can speculate. I think if you're going to pin me down and ask me for what reason is he gone, I think it's because the Philadelphia Eagles think he brought a weapon onto NovaCare property.
John McMullen's with us. He has plenty on this story at 973ESPN.com. Had an interesting text message today from a listener that I want to ask you about. Maybe Lurie and Roseman spoke to Huff and deemed that he just absolutely doesn't get it, and then realized he's got to go. Possible?
It's always possible, but Josh, for the most part, has been pretty contrite. And even during the incident himself, as I said, when he was pulled over, he didn't try to deflect the issue from even the police. He gave him the marijuana, told him the gun was in the car. So this is not a guy who was trying to get away with something or a hardcore criminal who's had a lot of issues in the past. And I again, when he spoke, I don't think he did himself all that well, but that was more to do with not understanding the gravity of the situation. He did admit he made a mistake, and he said he was very sorry for it, and he's been contrite throughout the process, and he did release a statement today that was contrite. So, while it's always possible he could change that tone in front of the general manager and the owner, I find that hard to believe. So if you're asking me, is that what went down? I truly doubt it.
Howie was asked today, when Doug came down yesterday, had you made the decision that you were going to keep Huff, or did you still not know at that time? Even if they didn't know, doesn't it seem like they didn't sit with Pederson and go over like a plan? Like, hey, don't say he's going to play. Just say we haven't. I mean, doesn't it seem like they just completely whiffed on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question Doug was not informed before he spoke to the media on Wednesday. If he was, why would he have acted the way he did? He said, basically, it's similar they've done with other incidents, whether it's Nelson Aguilar or Nigel Bradham. It's status quo until the legal process plays out. It's basically been the Eagles' method of operation in these types of instances. And all of a sudden that changes today. And if there was an inkling of that happening, Howie should have informed the head coach before he went in front of the media. So either the Eagles made a complete 180 since Doug spoke on Wednesday till this morning, or the general manager didn't inform his head coach that this was a possibility. There's only really two explanations for that.
Yeah, and yesterday, John, you wrote about Precedent on our website, 973ESPN.com. You wrote that Doug Pederson has set the precedent. What is the precedent they set now?
Well, we tried to get that out of Howie. What is the difference in this circumstance between other incidents? He was asked point blank, and he didn't want to get into specifics. He just said there were different circumstances. And hey, my problem with that is that leads to speculation. I gave you my speculation. I think the Eagles believe Josh had the weapon at the NovaCare complex in his car, not in the actual building, but in his car, which is still against NFL rules. But there's other speculation, and it can go from everything that Josh is not as an important part of this team as Nigel Bradham. And it invites
all. At the time of Bradham's run-in, we didn't know how important he was.
Well, the first run-in, yeah, but the second run-in, it was pretty clear that he was an important part of the team. So he's had two issues.
Well, that happened during the bye week, right?
Yeah. When he beat up the Cabana boy, we had no idea. And if you remember, going back then, I advocated the Eagles should cut him because I didn't think he was going to be an important part of this team. And if you really wanted to send a message, that would have sent a message. By the time he got arrested at the airport in Miami, coming back from the bye week, it was clear that he was a very important part of this team, and they went the way they went.
You can argue they win. You can argue they win the Detroit game if he plays the full game.
That's true. and they claim that wasn't disciplinary, but we can also talk about that. As for Josh, we know, he's more important than people think, not as a receiver, but as a kick returner. You can argue the Eagles don't beat the Vikings without that kickoff return. His big kickoff return in Dallas set up a score. He's an important part of this team on special teams, was an important part. Obviously, as a wide receiver, he's been a disappointment. But you have that. Obviously, we can talk about it. If this is Fletcher Cox, if this is Brandon Graham, if this is Carson Wentz, if this was a star player on this team, hey, they're not getting released. I think we can all agree on that. So there is a sliding scale. And, the Eagles are one of 32 teams that employs that same sliding scale, so I'm not going to kill them for that aspect of it.
John, the Eagles are also one of 32 teams that employ a full-time security guy. It used to be Butchie Bachanico. It's now Dom walks around with the guys, and he's the first guy they meet when they get off the airplane, usually when they come in either as a free agent or they're drafted by the team. And Howie was asked today, are you operating with more information than what's publicly available on the police report? That's what doesn't add up for me, is the timing of why it would take 48 hours if they have a guy that is supposed to be connected and get on top of things. Why did it take so long for them to get to this decision? And why did they do it in such a weird order?
Yeah, well, that's the big question, because if you read the police report, everything's pretty clear as far as what happened, because Josh admitted it. He wasn't trying to, be evasive about the subject. He admitted to the officer that he had marijuana. He admitted that he had a gun. So none of that is in doubt. We always talk about allegations when people get arrested, and a lot of times they have differing stories, and perhaps that's the difference between Nigel Bradham, because Nigel didn't flat out say, yeah, I hit the guy in the nose. Now, he did admit to bringing the gun to the airport, but said it was a mistake. So in his case, perhaps that's the circumstance, but that's the problem with Howie Roseman and what he did today. Instead of clarifying a situation, he just invited speculation, and you can come at it from 100 different angles, and that to me is never a prudent way to do things.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. I know a lot got swept under the rug today because of Roseman actually speaking. The two coordinators spoke earlier in the day. I guess just as an overview, did anything they say stand out this week?
Well, you're right. I mean, to give you an example, Leotis McKelvin spoke in his locker today, and I think he got one question on OBJ and about 15 on Josh Huff. So it did overwhelm everything. But the coordinators, because they spoke before the Huff news broke, it was business as usual as far as the football aspect went. And Frank got a lot of questions about stretching the field because the Eagles haven't done it. And more important than that, haven't attempted to do it. He was also very, very honest about the fact that Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz have not sort of bonded on the field together and don't have a connection. And he needs to make that happen, and he's a little bit surprised that it hasn't happened quicker because, hey, a 6'6" tight end who runs good routes and has that athleticism should be the best friend of any quarterback, and that hasn't happened to this point. We talk about it each and every week, but Frank is well aware of it, and he needs to get that fixed. I think it's a combination of things, and it starts with pass protection. I think the entire Eagles offense has been wholly less effective since the day Lane Johnson left this lineup. And to me, it's not really a great mystery. That's been the biggest issue.
Real quick, Bryce Treggs, is he expected to be the guy that will replace Josh Huff? I know Roseman said today they will replace his spot on the roster. Will that be Bryce Treggs activated on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, Treggs is already on the roster, so yeah, he'll be active, he'll be dressed, and then they're going to fill the roster spot, and that could make the Paul Turner fans all across the area very, very happy. Although they can go in different directions, they could certainly go outside the organization if they want a receiver. They also have a need at corner. Remember when the injury happened there, they didn't bring up another corner at first. They brought back Taylor Hart, and all of a sudden you have Aaron Grimes on the practice squad, so they might go in that direction. But Howie did say they're going to fill that 53rd roster spot by the time by Sunday. So they will have that 53rd player on the roster by Sunday. It could be Paul Turner, could be somebody else, as I said, and we'll see how that shakes out.
All right, John has more on this story at 97.3ESPN.com. Eagles-Giants this weekend. You can listen to the game on 97.3. I said, John, yesterday, I think the loser of this game is out of the division race. Fair?
I think it's very fair for the Eagles because, hey, the division losses are piling up if you lose this one. And granted, they've all been on the road, but you don't want to go 50-50 in the division, winning your home games and winning your road games. You want to at least steal one of them, and this is it for the Eagles. And if they want to challenge for the Cowboys at the top of the NFC East, yeah, I think this is must win. I don't think it's must win for wild card because you've seen the NFC landscape, as we kind of talked about back on Tuesday, with Minnesota coming back to the pack. It's wide open. Basically, everybody but San Francisco and Chicago is still relevant as far as the wild cards go.
All right, John, we'll talk to him tomorrow, get his pick for the game as well. Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.